Hey all, DJ Short from NBC Sports Edge and Roto World here, back for our weekly fantasy baseball Q&A every Tuesday, 1 p.m. Eastern Time. Thanks for joining me here. I'll be here for about the next 30 minutes or so as we dig into an interesting day in Major League Baseball. Aaron Judge slated to come off the injured list. That will be a welcome return for the Yankees, who are stumbling recently, and for fantasy managers, of course, as Judge was an early first round pick. So getting that power back in your lineup is a huge deal, but still a ton going on even beyond that. Some interesting developments this morning. Max Fried landing on the injured list with a forearm strain. The Braves were pretty tight-lipped about the situation over the past couple of days. He had a really bad inning last Friday, uh, and then after that, Brian Sicker was very vague about what was going on with Reed's health. There was at least the acknowledgement that he was going to be pushed back, but it wasn't clear if he was actually hurt. Now we know it's a forearm strain. The Braves are reportedly saying that there's not concern about its second Tommy John surgery, but that it's not necessarily going to be a short-term absence either. So we're talking about a little while. Obviously, a big blow to the Braves. Spencer Strider still at the top of that rotation, but um, a lot of question marks after that. Of course, with Kyle Wright also sidelined right now. So, like a best case scenario for Fried, shut down for a few weeks and maybe All-Star break. Maybe that's kind of where we need to set our baseline expectations at this point. Again, not concerned about Tommy John surgery, but these things can change. So, um, definitely a tough blow for the Braves. And interesting development about maybe Max Scherzer as well. David Peterson was demoted over the weekend, got off to a rough start this season, but he's apparently been scratched from his AAA outing today. The Mets dispatched him to Cincinnati. Mike Mayer of Metsmerize was first to report that information that David Peterson is on his way to Cincinnati or might already be there. The implication here is that Max Scherzer slated to pitch tonight against the Reds. And there was a story in the New York Post that came out yesterday. Max Scherzer acknowledged that he's still dealing with some discomfort in his scapula near his shoulder blade, kind of a back shoulder type of injury here. And he wants to continue pitching through it. As the article stated, he wants to pitch at less than 100% rather than take the time off. But I don't know if this is just the Mets being better safe than sorry, getting him up or getting Peterson out to Cincinnati. If Scherzer warms up and just doesn't feel good, who knows? Or they already know Scherzer's not going to pitch, but I think we're going to hear something about that very soon. The velocity was down with Scherzer in his last start, which was the return from the suspension. He didn't look good, hasn't looked great all season. Something's going on here. We know he was pushed back a couple of weeks ago with a back issue. I suppose it's the same thing right now. So we should hear a lot more about that really soon. Wanted to give you guys a little bit of time to get in here. Thanks for joining me here as usual. Also, a quick reminder, download the RotoWorld app to receive breaking player news all season long. Stay ahead of the competition by favoriting players on your roster. Get the latest injury updates, player news, and much more delivered right to your phone. It's available in your app store today. Okay, let's get started, huh? So this first question here from Rhino: should I ride with Bohm or pick up Eugenio Suarez off waivers in a 12-team points league? I think it depends on what you need. Suarez more is the play for power. Bohm, I think, more batting average based. I like the lineup in Philly a lot better, especially with Harper coming back. I think Bohm has some power, untapped power potential too. If going into the year, I had Bohm higher than Suarez, I believe, just because I believe in the talent and that we haven't seen his peak yet. For me, I would probably take Bohm. Also, he doesn't strike out very much, which is generally a big key here. So that would be my call on that one. John, when do you foresee the Mets finally going with Brett Beatty as their everyday third baseman? Will they DFA Escobar at any point? It sure seems to me the Mets are already going with Brett Beatty as their regular third baseman. There will certainly be times and days where he will sit, and it will probably be against a tough left-hander. But otherwise, I expect Beatty to be in there pretty much every day. This is, of course, barring some major slump that he might go into. But yeah, I think for the most part, we're going to see Beatty in there every day. He's made his way to the middle of the Mets lineup in recent days, which is promising, and he's hitting. So I think he's going to be in there pretty much every day. Escobar, it's more of a wait and see with him. I know how popular he is in that clubhouse. He can still play a role, even if it's a DH against lefties. He could play some second base, as we've seen, as well. Has some experience around the diamond. I don't think he's going anywhere just yet, but I don't think his presence on the roster is necessarily going to hurt Beatty at this point, as long as he keeps hitting. Rhino again. Encarnacion Strand, the prospect with the Reds, or Jordan Walker up first. I think it's probably going to be Encarnacion Strand. I don't know how much longer the Reds can wait on what he's doing right now in AAA. He's really just been outstanding. Came over in the Tyler Mahle deal last year, and of course the Twins are hoping to get something out of Mahle here soon. But Encarnacion Strand has some legit pop, and a prospect coming up to a hitter-friendly ballpark there in Cincinnati would obviously be valuable. With Walker, I think it's just mostly a numbers game, and with Wilson Contreras slated to see a lot of the time out of the DH spot, I mean that covers up another potential route for playing time for Walker. With the moving pieces in that outfield there in St. Louis. I don't know how long this arrangement with Contreras is going to last. Is it something where they just want his comfort level to get higher with the pitchers? I don't know, but it does seem like he's being blamed for their poor start to the season when overall roster construction, especially with the pitching staff, is a big issue there. So Walker was forced out just as a playing time situation numbers game in the first place. But I think again that Contreras serving essentially as a regular DH is only going to make it that much tougher for him to find his way back to the majors. And he hasn't hit well on a small sample since the demotion anyway. Perry with a question. Panic meter on Alex Bregman. How do you feel about him rest of season? Bregman's one of those guys that I think he's boring in fantasy, but potentially very useful. I think we've seen his fantasy peak already. I think, is he pressing with no Altuve? Who knows? I think he deserves probably better luck than he's had to this point. Too, the strikeout rate is elite. I mean, he struck out 10.9% of the time this year, more walks than strikeouts. His expected batting average is 249. So even as bad as he's been, he certainly deserved better. He's in a good ballpark for his style of play as well. I think he'll be fine. I mean, you certainly aren't dropping in Alex Bregman. So what do you really do? I think you're stuck with him. I think this Astros lineup will only get better when Altuve returns and everyone's healthy there. I think the lineup will lengthen. Michael Brantley eventually be back to, he comes with his own set of questions health wise, but I think you got to sit on Bregman and hope for the best here. Richard, what are your thoughts on Luis Ortiz? That's the prospect up with the Pirates. So Ortiz showed a little bit toward the end of last season with the Pirates. Certainly has a big arm, explosive stuff. Control has been an issue. It wasn't that small sample with the Pirates last year. I get it why the Pirates are doing it, especially with Vince Velasquez, out for a while probably. But mixed leagues, I'm not sure I'd go there just yet. I think the control could be problematic. The Pirates are in a bit of a tailspin right now. I'm just not ready to go out there and trust him right away in a standard mixed league. I think they're, as far as like the hierarchy of pitching prospects that have come up in recent days, I'm not sure he would rank necessarily among the high ones for me. I think there are going to be some ups and downs, just as there are with lots of young pitchers, but Ortiz control is a concern for me. William with a question: do you feel Drew Smiley is a decent hold at starting pitcher? I do. I think you can generally hold on to him if you want to play certain matchups. That makes sense too. Um, Most recent start only went 3 innings against the Marlins. Walk three. Not a great start. Everything before that was pretty solid. So, you know, barring some kind of physical issue here, I wouldn't be too concerned about it. But I think you ride the wave with Smiley for the time being, and see where it takes you. I think he's deserved a little bit more grace as far as his results here. I would probably, if it's 2 or 3 bad starts in a row, then maybe you take your chances on the waiver wire. But for now, I still think he's worth holding. RC, what's going on with Tim Anderson? I know he's back up to the IL stint, but he's been really bad. Let me pull up his baseball Samad page here. So Anderson so far, 263, 0 homers, 309 OBP, 638 OPS, has 5 steals. His expected batting average is 292. He's striking out a lot more this year than he did last year, but he's one of those guys who always seems to outkick his batting average as far as batting average on balls in play. The speed tends to help. His sprint speed has been down this year, notably from previous seasons. 51st percentile so far this year. So I think that's something to watch here moving forward. He's never been the kind of guy who is going to hit extremely or rate highly in terms of quality of contact, hard hit percentage, barrel percentage, that sort of stuff. That's not a big surprise given his frame. So the speed is important to his game. The volume is important to his game near the top of the White Sox lineup. I think he deserves a little bit more of a leash here, but ideally you would see the speed be a bit more prominent in his game for sure. Isabel with a question. Good morning. Would you rank Mervis, Encarnacion Strand, Jordan Walker, 13 team Roto? I think you have the order right right now. It's kind of crazy because out of spring training, I would have put Walker first, and I'm sure you got a lot of tickets for rookie of the year futures picks that Walker would be number 1. But I'm sure we'll see Walker again this season at some point as that playing time situation shakes out in St. Louis. But as of now, I'm not sure that. I think we'll see more of Mervis, and we'll see more of Encarnacion Strand, and more. Mervis is already up, but I think we'll see more of Encarnacion Strand than Walker going forward. If I had to make a guess right now, so I think you have the order right. I'm excited to see what Mervis can do. Christopher Morel was called back up as well. Did a little bit last year with the Cubs. Some pop and speed in the approach, maybe a little bit flawed. We'll see if the progress that he made in AAA this year, the numbers he put up were ridiculous, better than Mervis's. If he can hold down a prominent spot on this Cubs team. Well, we should also learn later today what's going on with Nico Horner. He pulled up a little bit lame on the base pass last night. Hamstring issue, I believe it's called hamstring tightness. He's going to get some imaging and be evaluated today, and we'll see what happens. But to me, I think you should bank on an IL stint, so make sure you have a backup plan there. But Morel makes for an interesting pickup with what he can do in pop and speed, at least assuming he gets the playing time. William, what are some trade options batter-wise for Pablo Lopez, Sonny Gray, Yu Darvish, and/or Alek Manoah? So when I am in these situations, it's really hard for me to answer this question in just as a snap judgment here, but I would say if you are in this situation, you should probably go to NBCSportsEdge.com. Go to our recent monthly rankings that Matthew Poliot puts out. He has a top 300 overall rest of season. This came out last week, 6 days ago. So this is how I like to look in terms of trades, because it gives you some ballpark, and it gives you a nice fair place to start from in terms of finding a trade partner. Because the last thing you want to do is insult a fellow fantasy manager. Uh, you don't want that kind of animosity building if you're, you know, giving an unfair offer. So let's look at Pablo Lopez and see where he is right now. So in Matthew's top 300 that he had last week, he had Pablo Lopez in the same area as Jorge Mateo, as Jose Altuve, as Anthony Volpe, uh, Tommy Edman, Vinny Pasquantino. Like that gives you a little bit of a sense of where he might sit, right on the cusp of the top 100, and that seems pretty fair to me. Sonny Gray is I'm fascinated to see where he is too. Sonny Gray is a little bit lower than Lopez, which I think is fair. Um, and he's right there with Brandon Nimmo, Anthony Rizzo, Masataka Yoshida. That would be an interesting challenge trade, Yoshida for Gray. So I would recommend going to NBCSportsEdge.com. Check out Matthew Poliat's rankings. He has the top 300 overall. He also has it for each position. Just put these names in here. See, put the names in the top 300. Search for them in there and see what hitters are around them. That's usually how I start to map out any sort of trade discussions. Just to be fair. Richard, when will we see Jose Altuve in Houston? Will he be affected by the thumb? I think the thumb's the big question when you talk about hitting anything with the hand. Obviously, a thumb is a concern, but Altuve is just such a maestro with the bat that I'm not super concerned about it. I know Altuve's been taking some batting practice, stuff like that. It seems like a minor league rehab assignment isn't too far off for Altuve. I think we see him next 10 days or so, possibly. So that's going to be huge. So yeah, I think it'll be great for that Astros team and honestly a really competitive AL West. And for the Astros, Luis Garcia undergoing Tommy John surgery, Jose Urquidy is hurt as well. Sorry for the mispronunciation. Jose Urquidy is hurt as well. Hunter Brown a little bit up and down as a rookie pitcher. So there's a lot of questions on that Astros roster, more than there has been in the past 5 years or so. So getting Altuve back is going to be huge for that team. Next up, do you think Jason Adam will hold the closer role for the Rays when Pete Fairbanks is back? No, I don't necessarily think that. But I think the big question is, when will Fairbanks be back? It doesn't necessarily sound like something that Fairbanks will be ready as soon as he's eligible. We know the Rays can keep us on our toes in terms of save chances and that sort of stuff, but Adam is the most accomplished pitcher in that bullpen, probably the best pitcher in that bullpen with Fairbanks sidelined. So Adams the pickup. I wouldn't bank on anything after Fairbanks comes back, but we'll see, how things progress with Fairbanks. Say a Suzuki or Bader, I'm assuming Harrison Bader, rest of season 10 team need to drop one of the two. I would definitely keep Suzuki over Bader. Bader has his own injury history. I know Suzuki started the year on the injured list with an oblique strain, but my expectations for Suzuki coming into the season were much higher than Bader. And I did like Bader too, with the power and speed in the Yankees lineup in Yankee Stadium. There's a case to be made for him, but I think Suzuki can, at his best, be capable of being a 5 category contributor in a Cubs lineup, which is better than a lot of people thought it could be. So yeah, to me, a pretty easy decision there. Stuck with Ahmed Rosario and Andres Jimenez in my second base shortstop 14-team roto. What could Matt Olson or Logan Gilbert get me realistically to replace one of them? So again, I would go back, like I just said, with the other question about starting pitching. You could get a lot for Matt Olson if you wanted to trade today. Honestly, the power that he brings to the table, you could really look for anyone, I'd say, outside of the first round of players who were drafted this spring, honestly. So, Jazz Chisholm is an option for you. Bobby Witt Jr. is an option for you. Nico Horner, unfortunately, hurt, but Willie Adames. You can look that high as far as a potential trade partner for Matt Olson. Logan Gilbert would be a little bit lower, obviously, but still, I think his case is very high. Are you looking at Ozzy Albies? I think that could be a possibility. Brandon Lau with the Rays as well as a possibility. So yeah, I think you could ask pretty high to replace one of these guys. We'll see what's going to happen with Jimenez. Rosario is tends to be a slow starter. Watching him during his career with the Mets before he went over to Cleveland, I think he'll be fine. Jimenez is someone who always looked like a regression candidate. The quality of contact really wasn't super high last year, even when he had all that success. He's better than what he's shown for sure, but yeah, just hasn't been making a lot of hard contact so far, which is a little bit worrisome. The speed gives him a decent floor, but yeah, I think Jimenez looked like an obvious regression candidate to me. Let's see, where else should we go here? Okay, stick with Tanner Bybee, or was it all hype? Dude couldn't beat the Tigers. I mean, it's a rookie pitcher. These things are going to happen. I think the stuff with Bybee is great. It's just one of those nights. Yes, it looked like a great matchup on paper, but hey, the Tigers beat up on Max Scherzer last week. You know, these things happen. Max Scherzer or Justin Verlander gave up 2 home runs to the Tigers last week. So, these things happen. I think Bybee is someone you should hold on to. I'm not too worried about it, but it also is just a reminder like these are rookie pitchers and these things will happen. So, I think he's worth hanging on to, and we'll just see how it plays out. Morgan, who would you pick between Alex Caroloff and Jaron Duran in an OBP format would be dropping Duran for Kirilov. Also, is Michael not Mike Soroka a worthy stash? So we'll start with the Soroka question. It doesn't seem like he's an option necessarily right now. It does seem like uh, what was expected to be Freed's spot in the rotation will be filled with either Dylan Dodd or Jared Schuster. Soroka is there on the depth chart for sure, but I think he's like the number 6 option out of who the Braves currently have. Right now, as of today, it's Strider and Morton as like the holdovers. Bryce Elder has obviously been very good so far this year. Then you have Dodd and Schuster. Soroka is that number 6 option. I think he's worth a stash, but it depends on who you drop. You know what I mean? And it's hard to answer that fully without context. So, in an OBP format, I think I would take Kirilov over Duran. I am a super fan of Alex Kirilov and what he's capable of doing when he's healthy. We haven't seen a lot of that, obviously, unfortunately, but he mashed in AAA, deserves this opportunity. And before all the wrist issues, he showed a lot of potential a couple of years back with the Twins in terms of making that quality of contact that you want to see. Had the pedigree in the minors of being a top hitting prospect, just needs to stay healthy, and man, hopefully it happens. And speaking of staying healthy, Mason Miller, the A's rookie, is being examined due to a forearm injury. We'll find out soon the severity of that issue. Hopefully, not a long-term thing for Mason Miller. A's fans need something to be excited about right now. So hopefully not a long-term absence there, but we shall see. Another quick reminder here: Sunday morning means MLB Sunday leadoff. Watch exclusive games all season on Peacock. This week you can watch Shohei Ohtani, Mike Trout, and the Angels take on the Guardians in Cleveland. Catch the action live this Sunday at 11:30 a.m. Eastern time. That should be a ton of fun. Get to see Ohtani and Trout against the Guardians there. So definitely check that out. Brian, rate these starting pitchers rest of season: Ober, Logan Allen, Bybee, Bryce Miller, Gore, Miley, Kikuchi, Keller. Woof. It's tough to do off the top of my head, but I will do my best here. I'm gonna go. I will go Keller, Gore, Kikuchi. Actually, I'm going to go Keller, Gore, Miller, just because I'm concerned about the workload there. I think the net, which you're going to get when he pitches, is going to be great. Keller, Gore, Miller, Kikuchi, Bybee, Allen, Miley. What do you think of that? By the way, Miller this weekend, Bryce Miller and weekend fab was one of the craziest things I've seen in a while. Uh, in leagues where you have $1,000 budget, I saw him go north of 300 and multiple leagues, and this was kind of a normal thing uh, across the fantasy landscape over the weekend. I mean, he's looked great. It's passes the eye test for everything you want in a potential frontline starting pitcher, but that was it's a very high number. Need at offense average badly. Would you trade any of these now? Brown, Bryce Miller, Brandon Pfaadt. So Pfaadt is going to pitch again tonight. He didn't look great in his first start. Obviously, you are going to wait until after that outing to see if he has a better performance, and maybe you can sell high off of that. That's just, I guess, fantasy trade 101. Bryce Miller, you could ask for the moon right now. You know what I mean? So it's not a bad idea to ask around, especially given all the enthusiasm, which I just mentioned in weekend fab. Hunter Brown, a couple bad starts in a row. He's had 3 really amazing starts and like 4 not so great starts. So I don't know how many innings Brown would be expected to throw this year. So I think that's a legit question, and how he'll fare over the course of the summer as he reaches kind of maybe uncharted territory for himself and how performance could dip there. So, yeah, I think Brown and Miller are worth selling on. Fought less so just because he hasn't really done a whole lot in the majors yet. He's probably more of a hold among this group. And yeah, Mitch, that could go the same way for Matt Mervis. It's never a bad idea to ask around with some of these prospects. Sometimes you can get something pretty useful, but on the other hand, if he hasn't really proven anything at the major league level, sometimes it's hard to get anything there either. Nolan Arenado, just question marks, exclamation points. I get it. A lot of the blame going to Wilson Contreras, the pitching staff, etc. But Nolan Arenado has not looked great. The quality of contact with him has been way down, striking out way more. I mean, I tend to trust the history here, so I think Arenado will be back. But yeah, it's discouraging, and it's one of those things where it's like, you know, you bench him and then suddenly he has a huge game. So it's like, what do? You're definitely stuck. You're not dropping Nolan Arenado. You don't want to trade Nolan Arenado because of where you drafted him, So it's just one of those situations where you're stuck and you just hope that the talent ultimately plays out. So yeah, I wish I had a good answer for you, but it's kind of the way it is right now. Let's see. Hold on to Michael King in a saves only league. It depends on what your other options are. Like if you're really hurting for saves, then I guess I could see it because he could still vulture some wins too. But yeah, it just depends. And if you already have 2 closers on your roster in a 12 team type of league, I don't think he's a must hold in that type of situation. But he's interesting at least. All right. David, is it time to cut bait on Jose Abreu? I I think I'm more willing to explore it with Abreu, obviously, than Arenado because we saw the power outage from Abreu last year. I was very optimistic about him going to Houston, especially because the quality of contact was good last year, even though the power wasn't there. That hasn't been the case this year so far. So yeah, I'd be willing to explore it. I think in a shallow mixed league, like say it's a 10-team league, you could drop him. I would be willing to do it. You know, at least seeing what the alternatives out there are on the waiver wire in a kind of a 12-team, 15-team setup. I don't think that Abreu is a drop yet. Is he a bench? Maybe. Yeah, I think you could justify that for sure. What's wrong with Dylan Cease? So Cease was a fade for me going into this year. The strikeouts are going to be there. Like he has that kind of stuff, but the control is problematic. If his command isn't on point, he's going to get hit around. The strikeouts will be there. but I believe he led the league in walks last year. I mean, that's just going to be a part of his game. So, if he isn't on 100% in terms of that command or pretty close to it, these things are going to happen. And certainly the White Sox have been one of the most disappointing teams in the majors. Lost Eloy Jimenez with his appendectomy. He's going to be out for a while too. So just a lot going wrong for this White Sox team right now, unfortunately. Harry, what's going on with the Mariners' offense or lack thereof? J-Rod and Kelnick have been ice cold. Does seem like the league's adjusting to Kelnick, maybe J-Rod too. Kelnick especially, though, has been interesting to watch. And hey, now he needs to make the adjustments. That's just what playing in the majors is all about. It's constant adjustments. And Kelnick got off to a great start, and there were some real changes behind it that looked legit, and now he needs to adjust again. Julio Rodriguez, no doubt, has been a disappointment so far. I'm going to pull up his Baseball Savant page just to get a better indication of where he sits right now. So he's striking out a little bit more, not hitting the ball quite as hard as he did last year, but the expected stats are very similar to what he had last year. And if you remember last season, uh, J Rod was running a lot, but the power wasn't really there in the beginning. That kind of happened later. So I'm going to be fascinated to see as the season moves along if maybe these things start to pick up. You would certainly hope so. I think a lot of the preseason expectations of the Mariners was built on Julio Rodriguez and his progress. They really need something to break right with their offense right now because it looks really really bad. And I guess the good news is that the AL West is there for the taking. I think they're very much right there to be competitive here because I don't think the Astros are going to be quite the juggernaut that they've been in the past. Not a big surprise, but I don't expect that to be the case. So I have time for a couple more questions. And again, thank you so much for uh, always coming in here strong with some good questions week to week. I really do appreciate it. You can follow me on Twitter at DJ Short. So if I didn't get to your question today, you can find me on there. I'll try to make time to answer some questions if I can. Patrick with a question: Jonathan India or Jeff McNeil rest of season? I think it kind of depends on what you need. I think India is going to give you a little bit of speed on your roster, which is helpful. Volume at the top of the Reds lineup. They're just different kind of players. Jeff McNeil is a batting average play. The power is going to be occasional. The speed isn't necessarily part of his game, though. Maybe a little bit more, given the state of Major League Baseball right now. But if your batting average is sagging on your roster, I think McNeil makes for a good counterbalance there. So I would probably go McNeil just because to me he's a little bit more proven than India, but India might have the higher ceiling. I think McNeil is the safer floor play, if that makes sense. Okay, is the Wander Franco breakout for real? To me, yeah. I think it's amazing what a year can do because going into last year, I thought Wander Franco could be an MVP candidate. And here he is right now. He has as good a case as anyone to be an MVP candidate. Striking out a little bit more this season, but maybe that's a good thing. Sometimes being a little too contact oriented can hurt you. So he looks like he's selling out a little bit more for power this year. The barrel percentage is up to 10.5%. It was 4.6% last year, 4.9% in 2021. And the strikeouts haven't impacted his expected batting average. 274 expected batting average, 307 actual batting average, 6 homers, 8 steals. For a while, the question in fantasy for Franco is like, what kind of category juice is there? Like, we knew he was going to hit for batting average, but what was the power and speed going to be like? Well, he's doing all of those things right now. Can he be 2020 this year? Yeah, I think he certainly could be. 2020, 80, 90 RBIs, 90 runs scored. Like, that's the kind of season we could be looking at, which is huge. And it's nice to see him bounce back and be healthy. I certainly hope that can happen. So I have time for one more question. We'll go with this one. Look into your crystal ball. Does Kyle Schwarber get hot at the dish, or is playing the outfield so much with Harper DH going to take a toll on him? I don't know if it'll take its toll. It may, but and the idea of Kyle Schwarber being hot, it's like he's never going to hit for average. Like that's just not his game. You know what I mean? But as the weather warms up there in Philadelphia, the lineup getting better and longer with Harper returning, I think we're going to see one of these runs. Like there's going to be a week here where Kyle Schwarber hits like 5 to 6 home runs. Like it's going to happen. You can bank on it for sure. I still think Schwarber is going to be valuable when it's all said and done. It's just that there's always a little bit of a roster compromise with Schwarber on your roster because of the low batting average output. So thanks again for your questions. Really do appreciate it. Remember, again, you can follow me on Twitter at DJ Short. Subscribe to the Circling the Bases podcast. Myself and Scott Pianowski host that show tomorrow. Wednesday, we do our Waiver Wire Wednesday show with some pickup recommendations across all different formats. So definitely check that out. Thanks so much for tuning in and your questions again. See you next week.